coming up on The World Today. The EndSARS protests continue across the country a 9th day as demonstrators continue to demand an end to police brutality. Crossing to Asia, anti-government protests are holding in Thailand, defying a ban on rallies in the country. The U.S. presidential debates are replaced with town halls. The two main candidates will field questions from citizens. Thanks for joining us, everyone. I'm Akaite Afia here in Lagos. We are still following the hashtag EndSARS protests going on across Nigeria as calls increase for police reform and an end to police brutality. Today is day 9. Protesters today blocked the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, causing gridlock just like they did yesterday. Motorists were prevented from moving on both sides of the expressway as traffic spilled to different parts of Ikeja. In the meantime, armed thugs moved into the Alausa area to disrupt the gathering of EndSARS protesters, forcing them to move away from the scene. Some of them were reportedly injured. A second group also blocked the Lekki tollgate area, preventing workers from getting...
You're watching Channels Television. Please stay with us as we join our live coverage in the nation's capital of Abuja for the Presidential Task Force briefing on COVID-19.
Another day, another massive protest by the EndSARS marchers who are back at the House of Assembly Drive in Alausa area of Lagos to resume their agitations. More young people join the movement, strengthening the gathering as they sing solidarity songs, indicating that they're not backing down anytime soon.
Solidarity forever! Solidarity forever! Solidarity forever! We shall always fight for.
But the protesters suffered a temporary setback as armed thugs move into the area, forcing them away. Undeterred, they later reconvened to continue with the business they came here for.
Sponsored thugs from the government to disrupt this protest so that they can bring in the soldiers and say they are trying to quell the uprising. But I tell you, Nigerian people, this is not a joke. We are going to take our country back. This is not going to stop us.
Meanwhile, the action continues at the Lekki tollgate area, also in Lagos State, which remains barricaded by the anti-SARS protesters for a 4th day. Already, business activities in the area appear to be coming to a halt as those who work in various organizations are said to be unable to make their way to work.
If you're not doing the business they're doing right now, you're not doing any business right now on the island.
In the southeast, hundreds of youths protest in Awka, the Anambra State capital, marching to the government house and blocking the expressway with tires, demanding for the prosecution of a former SARS commander over alleged killing of several youths and extortion of residents. At the government house, the secretary to the state government commends their peaceful conduct.
This demonstration has been very peaceful.
Protesters in Warri Delta State in the South joined the protest once more, moving from Efunro roundabout through Refinery Road to other parts of Warri, chanting the EndSARS songs and asking the authorities to implement the 5-point demand of the movement.
Asking for a reform generally, release all the protesters that have been arrested, bring the culprits to book. Everyone that killed somebody should be brought to book.
Meanwhile, in Kogi State, north-central Nigeria, a peaceful anti-SARS protest is taken to the state capital in Lokoja, where protesters appeal to Governor Yahaya Bello to stop police brutality. They say that in spite of the disbandment of SARS, some operatives are still operating on major highways and local government areas within the state.
Went into operation yesterday and still harassed some of the youth in Nayimba. And in Lokoja today, this morning, the same thing repeated itself. And we can't stand and be looking because
police brutality.
A voice of a comrade in the process of oppression is an oppressive voice.
The governor, who was presiding over the state executive council meeting, left to attend to them, cautioning the youth against losing a battle they have already won.
When you want to take leadership, you behave yourself in such a manner that you can be trusted to be given that leadership position. If you don't, nobody will ever take you seriously.
Youths in Plateau State also continue their protest against police brutality as they block the old airport roundabout, a major highway linking the state to the northeast from Abuja and the southern parts of the country. The protesters say they are resolved to stay on the streets across the country until police brutality is stopped and victims of extrajudicial killings get justice.
Well, the protests are being replicated across the globe. But let's go to South Africa, where hundreds of Nigerian youths living in the country marched to the Nigerian consulate in Johannesburg. More marches by other groups are in the offing, but today's protests are demanding, among other things, the release of many people allegedly detained by SARS in the past 2 or 3 years.
We are tired of them searching our phones. And they said we are the future of our tomorrow.
The protesters told us, yes, they've heard the government and all the changes and promises of changes, but they are not backing down just yet.
We don't agree. SARS must go. We don't agree. We don't agree. SARS must go. We don't agree.
Earlier, they had overrun the security gates of the Nigerian Consulate General in Johannesburg, and the outgoing Consul General himself came to listen to what they had to say.
I am here to serve you, even if it will kill me. So please, when you come for this type of thing, give me a time so that it will not be without you.
I listened to them. I said, SARS has ended, and they say, what was SWAT? I said, SWAT is only in the name. It's whatever it is. They may not even know exactly what it means. But the truth is that we must be able to have a tactical unit that will deal with crime. Crime is a big problem in Nigeria, and we must be able to deal with such crimes. So whether it is SWAT or anything, a tactical unit will still be available to deal with crime. And as most of the 5-point demands that they have raised to government have all been acceded to, and the processes of engaging them in all these things are on.
Away from the very energetic crowd, we spoke to one of the protest leaders, Bayo Fabusui, who says they're adding to the list of demands already given by the protesters in Nigeria.
All the people that have been arrested by SARS over the last 2-3 years, they're innocent people still there in the jail. They must go release all of them. Then the second thing we want is, when you say you're reforming SARS, don't just put the same criminals in another unit in the police force. You must bring all of them to the unit where they used to work, and you bring the youth out. We'll come and point to them. Those who have harassed us, those who have extorted people, they must point them, and they must all go to jail. When people are criminal, when they use state ammunitions to exploit people and to arrest them and kill them, you cannot say you want to protect their job because they have families.
The protesters have promised to return on Monday, the 19th of October, should they not begin to see the changes they are demanding from government. Meanwhile, other groups have also planned marches with the same hashtags. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Betty Dibia, Channels Television News.
It has been another day of protest in Thailand as people take to the streets of the capital Bangkok, defying a ban on gatherings and a sweep of arrest of key protest leaders. An emergency decree was issued earlier today in response to protests in Bangkok on Wednesday.
Thousands of protesters demonstrate in Bangkok, defying a ban imposed to end 3 months of anti-government action that has targeted the king as well as the prime minister. Despite police appeals over a loudspeaker to disperse, the group spills across the Ratchaprasong intersection in one of Bangkok's busiest commercial districts. It was the scene of bloodshed in 2010, with violence between supporters and opponents of the Thai establishment. Protesters also filled the walkways of the nearby shopping complex, holding up the three-finger salute adopted as a symbol of opposition after Prime Minister Prayut's 2014 coup. 3 months of protests in the country of 70 million have been largely peaceful. But in one incident, police pushed jeering protesters away from a motorcade carrying Queen Satida. Overnight, the government banned political gatherings of 5 or more people and the publication of news and online information that could threaten national security. The protest movement aims to remove Prime Minister Prayut, saying he manipulated an election last year to keep hold of power. He, however, says the election was fair. Those marching on the streets also want a new constitution and have called for a reduction in the powers of the king. They want his role to be clearly subject to the constitution and seek the reversal of orders that gave him control of the palace fortune and some army units.
Meanwhile, in France, police have raided the homes of senior government and health officials as part of an investigation into their handling of the coronavirus pandemic. Health Minister Olivier Véran and the Director of the National Health Agency, Jerome Salomon, are among those properties whose were searched today. Now, these raids come after a court launched an inquiry earlier this year into the government's handling of the pandemic. The authorities have faced criticism over shortages of equipment and slow response times.
Ni inactif, ni dans la panique. Un rapport d'ailleurs vient d'être rendu. Et donc la décision que nous avons prise.
More on this when we come back after this break. A couple that, well, travels together, stays together, I guess. We'll be learning about the Karyuks in a bit. Join us after this short break. Thanks for staying with us. You're watching The World Today on Channels Television. Now, before the break, we mentioned that French police have raided the homes of senior government and health officials as a part of an investigation into their handling of the coronavirus pandemic. So, joining us now is freelance journalist Ugochi Oluigbo in Saint Louis, France. Ugochi, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So, what more can you tell us about the raid on the homes of top government and health officials in France?
Well, the health minister and, of course, the former prime minister, Edward Felipe, have had their homes raided. And this comes as investigations into their handling of the coronavirus pandemic. This also come after about 90 complaints by frontline workers who said that there were shortages of protection gears for them during the pandemic. And also from people who have said that the government did not handle the pandemic very well. Initially, they had also said that mask was just for frontline workers. And of course, we would also remember that during that time, the world really was confused about how to handle the coronavirus pandemic. Even the World Health Organization had also said that the masks were basically for health workers because of the shortages. And these are the reasons why people are complaining. But some opposition persons have come out to say that really the world was actually confused about how to handle the coronavirus pandemic, and also the frontline workers who have also made these complaints. About 90 complaints from them were being actually protected because they were expected to need to have the need for those protective materials more. So they are saying that the government was not aware of how to handle the decisions. They didn't handle them as quickly as possible, and that's the major complaint.
Well, at the moment, it seems that the whole of Europe is experiencing a second wave of the coronavirus. And the French president, Emmanuel Macron, has announced new measures yesterday that will be starting from Saturday. So how much more do the citizens feel they can really take with these new measures announced? All right. Well, I think we have a little bit of technical difficulties right now, but in the meantime, millions of people in London, Essex, New York, and other areas face the Tier 2 COVID measures from Saturday. Under this high alert level, there is a ban on households mixing indoors, including in pubs and restaurants. Here's more on that from our global update.
London will enter a tighter COVID-19 lockdown from midnight on Friday as Prime Minister Boris Johnson seeks to tackle a swiftly accelerating second coronavirus wave. The respiratory pandemic, which emerged in China last year and has killed over 1 million people worldwide, is spreading in most parts of the United Kingdom, whose official death toll of 43,155 is the highest in Europe.
We must take firm and balanced decisions to keep this virus under control. This is the only way to protect lives and livelihoods. And we must act now. Delayed action means more deaths from COVID, it means more non-COVID deaths, and it means more economic pain later, because the virus comes down slower than it goes up.
Anger, though, is rising over the economic, social and health cost of the biggest curtailment of freedoms since World War II.
Don't think it will work, think it's a waste of time. It's affecting businesses, employment, and I do think there is a certain amount of herd immunity that's already happened, immunity, and I think we need to start getting to that point because it's not going to go away soon.
Poland's daily coronavirus cases soared over 8,000 for the first time on Thursday, hitting a record high for the second straight day, with the country likely to introduce new restrictions to try to curb the pandemic. While health authorities say there are enough hospital beds and respirators for now to tackle the infection, doctors warn that the system may soon become overloaded.
All right. Well, we have Ugochi Oluigbo back with us, who is discussing the situation going on in France right now. So, Ugochi, what I wanted to ask you is, it is interesting that the figures are rising in France, as it is one of the countries in Europe that imposed strict measures at the height of the pandemic. So what do you think may have brought it back to this position where it's having to deal with another wave of the coronavirus?
Well, according to the government, the shutting down of bars and restaurants from 7 p.m. till 6 a.m. Is just to stop the spread of the pandemic, because they believe that the virus is spreading from these places, it's spreading from people coming together to, have fun, eat together. So right now they are saying that just about 6 persons are allowed to be together after 6 p.m., after 7 p.m. in these 9 cities. And of course, Paris is part of the cities. So they're saying from the university, from young people who are gathered together during the summer period, and now they are the ones who are really spreading the virus. And for restaurant owners and those in the tourism business, they are of course not happy about this. They're saying that they're always blamed, for the spread of coronavirus. So according to the government, it's from these places where people hang out where they don't wear their mask, as enforced according to the regulations. So that's where the problem is coming from, according to the government. As in the past 24 hours, over 104 persons have died from coronavirus, and about 3,000 are intensive care units. And out of the 5,000 intensive care units in France, about 30% have been occupied by coronavirus victims, or coronavirus patients rather. So that is how bad it is in France right now, that these measures have now been imposed. There's a €135 fine on those who do not come out with their forms. The forms are back now actually in those cities also, so you have to go out with those forms. If you don't have the forms, €135 fine. And for repeat offenders, there will be over €7,000 of fine or 6 months in jail. So they're really serious about this time. And of course, the winter season is here, so the spike, the virus spike is really going high.
All right. Well, Ugochi, thanks so much for joining us today and giving us some more insight on the situation in France. Please stay safe out there.
Thank you.
Well, to the U.S. president. To the U.S. presidential election now, an election like no other and preparations like no other too. With the decision on presidential debates still up in the air, the two main candidates, Donald Trump and Joe Biden, will be holding question and answer sessions in a town hall later today, but from separate locations. The town hall holds at midnight GMT, in case you'd like to follow it, and it will see both field questions from voters. Campaigning has picked up the pace this week, with Mr. Trump holding rallies in the battleground states of Florida, Pennsylvania, and Iowa, and Mr. Biden traveling to Ohio and Florida. Tonight, Trump will be in Miami, Florida, and Biden in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, but not at the same time and on different U.S. networks. In the meantime, Mr. Biden's vice presidential candidate, Kamala Harris, is halting her campaigning. All right, well, my apologies. We will be taking that story on the Kenyan cyclist tomorrow, so tune in for that. That's all for the program today. I'm Akaite Afia. Have a great day and stay safe.